Let's now talk further about some important key terms in pragmatics. I'll begin with I principle and M principle. They both are important principles in New Gricean pragmatics. I principle is primarily the principle of information or informativeness, and it believes in saying as little as possible. Based on the necessity of the situation, whatever is necessary, say as much as it satiates your need to convey the necessary information or necessary message. This I principle is always coupled with some kind of Q principle, which is a quantity principle, that you should not compromise on conveying the information. If you say a little message, or say as little as possible, but it doesn't convey the information, doesn't convey the message or meaning, then it may not be a proper communication. So whenever you want to say only the necessary information or follow I principle, you need to see that you are also following quantity principle. That means you should make sure that whatever little you say is actually conveying the message. There could be certain assumptions about I principle. For example, when somebody is following I principle, he could, or the hearer could assume that the speaker is saying the message economically. He is not hiding anything, rather he is trying to convey his message in as little communication as possible. Similarly, the speaker might assume in this regard that he is trying to be more specific than being stereotypical or vague in some conventional or stereotypical ways. Rather, he is trying to be specific and wants to convey the information, as well as also want to save the time and energy of him or herself as well as of the hearer. I principle is usually used in unmarked communication or expressions, unmarked, which are routine expressions we use in our communication. Marked ones are those which are away from or different from the routine or unmarked expressions. So whenever there would be a special expression like marked expression, we will use M principle also, and that is the manner principle. I principle, primarily speaking, is a minimization principle, and it invokes lower bounding implicature. That means that lesser than this cannot be said. So this is the least you could say about a certain message or information. M principle, as I just mentioned, is related to manner of conveying a certain information, and it is one of the small number of heuristics which tells us about the manners or the ways or the rules of saying something. Heuristic deals with all these manner-related aspects of saying something in a communication or in other ways of life. In this regard, we can have a look at certain instructions which are important in heuristic transformation of knowledge, as well as which are related to M principle. For example, speaker to speaker, we might say, do not say things in an abnormal way without any reason. I mean, you shouldn't use a non-conventional way of saying thing or something which you think might test the understanding of your listeners. So do not say anything in an abnormal way. And to a listener, we might say that if a speaker is saying something in an abnormal way, just try to assume that it was said based on certain necessity. It was not without any reason, rather it was based on a certain need which was necessary to convey a certain information. M principle is one side of the division of the pragmatic labor, which focuses on the marked communication, whereas the unmarked communications are usually interpreted by the I principle. Whenever a marked communication or expression is used, then according to M principle, there should have been a reason. You cannot use a marked or unconventional way of expressing things without any reason. There should be a reasonable, social, cultural, or communicative aspect behind it. Then a non-stereotypical interpretation is also intended when we use a marked expression. So M principle is usually used when there are marked expressions and there is a non-stereotypical interpretation intended, whereas I principle is used with unmarked and routine conversations, and especially when communication is as little as possible.